Hello, YouTube. Welcome to my channel, Marriage, Politics, and Sports. Hey, we have another political one. I want to hear what Karoline Leavitt has to say from the White House. I haven't done one of these since the assassination, so we'll see what she has to say. I did not watch this, so we'll be looking at it together live. So I just want to see what she has to say. Of course, I put my commentary in there. Maybe one day I'll get good at this, but without further ado, from me, let's hear what Karoline has to say with her update, see what anything new we need to talk about. I know we didn't, just as post also, besides the tragic death, there's also been an interest rate decrease. We got one more thing to happen, and then Wall Street's going to be on fire. We need the Supreme Court to uphold the tariffs. So we'll see. I don't know if she's going to talk about that today, but it'll be great to see where that's at in the status. So without further ado, let's hear from Karoline, my favorite press secretary.
Later this afternoon, the president will be making a major announcement focused on the childhood autism epidemic, alongside his top health advisors who are working to make America healthy again. This will be a powerful display of how the entire Trump administration is committed to addressing root causes of chronic conditions and diseases, embracing full transparency in government, and championing gold standard science. Tonight, the president will depart to New York.
Let's stay on the autism thing. Of course, you wouldn't be surprised on how the people on the left are against them, even trying to find what the root cause is. Now, maybe they won't be successful. I know they talked a little bit about Tylenol. But here's my problem. I think with that release, they shouldn't have released anything at all until they had some scientific data. So I could agree with everybody else on that. However, the one thing that I was going back and forth with a friend of mine is that he was saying, listen, he was kind of poo-pooing the situation. I said, listen, since 2000, only 1 in 150 kids, came down with autism. Now it's 1 in 31, right? Something is going on with our food sources, our drugs, could be our vaccinations. It could be a whole host of factors. So why wouldn't anybody want to really research that, right? We have a child problem I'm talking about with well-to-do people. They're not having children. All the people in the field are having babies like crazy. The idiocracy thing is in full force. And the people who have means, who have direction and all that, they don't want to have any kids. People are talking about expenses and all that shit without having children. So they have maybe one, even in married couples, 1 or 2. But, the foreigners who come over, they'll be popping them out, in droves. And Americans are saying, maybe we'll have 1, or maybe we won't have any, or we'll go to the clinic and get rid of them. But the people on the lower end, they're popping them out. So we need to find out what's going on. Because if you have a kid with autistic kid, your level of support and the things you have to do goes up dramatically, depending on where they fall on the spectrum. Everybody knows that. So we need to try to find a root cause. Now, them announcing anything with Tylenol so soon, I have to say, I think that's stupid.
New York City, ahead of the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly. He will be joined in New York City by the First Lady. Tomorrow morning, President Trump will deliver a major speech touting the renewal of American strength around the world, his historic accomplishments in just 8 months, including the ending of 7 global wars and conflicts. The president will also touch upon how globalist institutions have significantly decayed the world order, and he will articulate his straightforward and constructive vision for the world. The president will also be hosting bilateral meetings with the UN Secretary General and the leaders of Ukraine, Argentina, and the European Union. The president will also later in the day hold a multilateral meeting with Qatar, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, Turkey, Pakistan, Egypt, the UAE, and Jordan. After these important meetings, the president will attend a reception tomorrow night with more than 100 world leaders before returning to Washington, D.C. On Thursday here at the White House, President Trump will welcome President Erdogan of Turkey for a bilateral meeting. And on Friday, the president will travel to Long Island for the Ryder Cup golf match between the United States and Europe. This event is one of the greatest sporting events in the world, and it would not be taking place this year without President Trump's help. President Trump signed an executive order last week preventing a strike that would have crippled the New York City area ahead of the tournament, and at the request of the 5 labor unions who all represent workers on the Long Island Railroad. One of the greatest golfers in the world, Bryson DeChambeau, praised the president's critical intervention, saying, quote, "When the possibility of a strike threatened to disrupt transportation and attendance, President Trump stepped up and took the action needed to protect this world-class competition." Thanks to President.
I wonder what he did. She didn't mention what he did to stop it, but maybe that'll come up later.
President Trump's decisive leadership, the Ryder Cup experience will be everything fans and the golf community deserve. Again, that's a quote from the great golfer Bryson DeChambeau. Now let's all hope the American Ryder Cup team can take home the trophy. In other news, positive economic data continues to pour in. Brand new polling shows that Americans' faith in the economy and the direction of the nation is back on track and shooting even higher. Home ownership is more affordable, with mortgage rates dropping to a 3-year low. For new home buyers, this represents a $250 decline in your monthly mortgage payment, or nearly $3,000 a year. President Trump has made it very clear he wants to continue to see mortgage rates decline to a record low, just like they did in his first term. Thanks to President Trump's unleashing energy dominance, gas prices are dropping and Americans are spending the smallest share of their disposable income on gasoline since 2005. Additionally, the annual cost to own and operate a new vehicle is down by nearly 6% over the last year. Americans are earning more and they are spending more than ever before.
I guess it depends on where you sit and what kind of profession you're in, that's true. But as long as we had the migrant crisis undercutting jobs for the lower echelon of people, and these companies hiring, illegal aliens to do certain jobs so they don't have to pay at least minimum wage with no benefits. I think she could be partially right. Even with the interest rate cut, most people are still going to be kind of cautious with how they buy the house because the prices of the houses are still too high, right? You'll still be paying almost $100,000 above what some of these houses are worth, even if the interest rates are down just a quarter. So let's not paint this thing into a euphoria just yet. We need probably a full point before we're really talking.
After inflation outpaced for 26 straight months under Joe Biden, real wages have increased nearly every month since President Trump took office, with wages for blue-collar workers rising at the fastest rate in 6 decades. Retail sales are also booming, up 5% over last year, and the stock market is booming, and Americans' retirement accounts continue to do well, with the Dow, S&P 500, and NASDAQ all hitting new record highs.
Now, the stock market, Wall Street is absolutely doing fantastic. I can attest to that. But there's still a disconnect from Main Street, depending on who you're talking to. Now, I know she won't do this, but it'd be good to see and talk about, and I know she won't get into the racial thing. It's kind of crazy. I keep hearing about the inordinate amount of Black women who got laid off, but nobody ever really talks about it in the context of how many people got laid off and what percentage were they. It just seems like a lot, and it is a lot. So the unemployment rate might be down, but what about that demographic? And it has to do with the kind of jobs they took, what kind of degrees they have, what is it? Or is it just a targeted kind of thing? And I know she's not going to talk about it. So is it real? Everybody keeps throwing around this 300 and something thousand number. It'd be nice to see exactly where that number comes from.
Highs. In fact, the S&P 500 is up nearly 15%, and the NASDAQ is up more than 21% since Election Day. As part of President Trump's mission to restore America as the manufacturing superpower of the world, he has secured nearly $9 trillion in U.S. investment, nearly 9 times more than Biden attracted in his entire 4-year term. And we expect that number to be upwards of $15 trillion very soon. We're already seeing the initial economic benefits of these investments, with industrial production recently rising to an all-time high. President Trump built the greatest economy in the history of the world in his first term, and we are witnessing him do it all over again. Now, before I open it up to questions, I do want to speak on the heinous political assassination of Charlie Kirk. As President Trump powerfully stated yesterday, this assassination was an attack on everything that makes the United States of America the greatest country on earth. But that attack has completely failed. The heartwarming response from the overwhelming majority of the American people over the past 2 weeks is all of the proof that you need. The assassin who took Charlie's life can destroy flesh and blood, but he can never destroy the values that Charlie stood for. All across the country, millions of Americans have prayed, hosted vigils, attended church services, became politically engaged for the first time, and honored the legacy of Charlie and the ideals he died speaking for. The beautiful memorial service attended by President Trump and 100,000 great Americans in State Farm Stadium yesterday was just the latest example. And Erica Kirk's mercy was one of the greatest acts of grace this world has ever seen. May God continue to watch over Erica and their beautiful children. Unfortunately, there have been some jarring exceptions to this unity. This past Friday, 58 House Democrats voted no, and 38 voted present on a resolution that simply stated, condemning in the strongest possible terms the assassination of Charles James Kirk and all forms of political violence. There were no strings attached to this vote. This was a simple gesture of human decency to denounce political violence. I wish I could say that this was only a fringe group, but 96 votes is nearly half of the entire House Democrat caucus. And they didn't just vote against this basic resolution condemning political violence. A number of those same Democrats took to the House floor to smear Charlie Kirk's name.
They absolutely did. And it's despicable. And whether you agree with Charlie Kirk or stay neutral, listen, we cannot, as a man who's old enough to remember the 60s, we cannot in any way, shape, form, or fashion condone or make excuses for assassinating people for what they believe in. I mean, our republic will die a horrible death if that continues to happen. And what Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, said just recently is absolutely abhorrent. And he should be, they're putting articles of impeachment in for him. They may fall flat, but he should be admonished at the highest levels for what he said. And you guys can go back and listen to it. And other people who are talking about making excuses for the left because they can't win an argument, they don't have any plan. And so now they want to resort to violence and assassinations to get their way. We need to really make sure that doesn't happen. So she has a point on this one, and it's really hard to argue against it. So go ahead, Karoline, finish up.
The man wasn't even buried yet, and Democrat members of Congress were denigrating his memory on the floor of the House of Representatives. This was truly a sad moment and a clear reflection of how radical the Democrat Party has become. Many Democrats in elective office have now been totally captured by a radical fringe of the far left base who want to dehumanize every person they disagree with. We must continue to call this wickedness out. It's the only way that our nation can heal. For too long, past leaders have offered platitudes while political violence has been allowed to fester and harm innocent Americans. There has been coordinated campaigns dating back years, spearheaded by radical left-wing organizations centered on dehumanizing, intimidating, doxing, and even attacking Americans whom they disagree with. These groups have radicalized impressionable individuals to foment violence. An attempted transgender assassin traveled to Justice Brett Kavanaugh's family home with plans to end his life. An attempted assassin came within an inch of ending President Trump's life in Butler, Pennsylvania. And on the campaign trail, another attempted assassin tried to kill the president at his golf club in Florida. A left-wing assassin shot United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson right in the back in the heart of New York City. ICE agents are facing a more than 1,000% increase in assaults for simply doing their jobs. Violent radical left-wing mobs engaged in illegal behavior, targeted Jewish Americans, and shut down America's college campuses under the previous administration. Left-wing mobs burned down Tesla dealerships out of, quote, protest of Elon Musk and his policies. In May, a left-wing activist shouting "Free Palestine" murdered 2 innocent Israeli embassy staffers outside of the DC Jewish Museum here in Washington. These are just a few examples, prominent examples of the growing left-wing political violence in our country. Enough is enough, and as President Trump has promised, he will directly address the dark sources funding and supporting this domestic terrorism to finally restore order in our country. The American people can expect further, very strong action on this very soon. Everyone, Republican, Democrat, everyone in between, we all deserve to live in a country where we do not have to fear for our lives simply for stating what we believe in. With that, I will take your question.
I agree with her 100%. However, it's a slippery slope because there's enough call for censorship, and it's not an equivalency, but the Jimmy Kimmel situation and the FCC chairman, he making a veiled threat maybe of pulling licenses from major broadcasters because of letting Jimmy Kimmel stay on. I think that was a bridge that was getting right there on a hairy edge that would make the Republicans and conservatives no different than the liberals from that standpoint, from a censorship standpoint, not from an assassination standpoint. So I know he's back. Kimmel is back on the air. He's not even funny. And I think money is going to dictate it. But I think we should get to the bottom of it because I think one of the podcasts I listened to, Tim, I forgot his last name. He's pretty popular. Tim something. I forgot his last name. The point really is he thinks that the leaders of ABC and Disney were threatened with their lives, and that's why they put Kimmel back on by the left. He believes that happens. That's happening, and that they got scared because it's not about money, because they're already losing money with Kimmel. So if they put him back on, they have a feeling that there was some threats on some major families and stuff, death threats and things of that nature. I think that needs to be investigated because that could be true.
In today's new media seat, we have Monica Page, who is the White House correspondent for Turning Point USA's news organization, on the front lines. Monica, thank you for being here. We're so sorry for the loss of Charlie. I know you work for him. You were very close to him, and we appreciate your being in the new media seat and also your commitment to covering the White House. You are here every day, just like the rest of everyone in this room. So why don't you kick us off today?
Thank you so much, Karoline. I don't think you realize how much it means to me to be here in this seat, especially on behalf of Turning Point USA and Frontlines. We greatly appreciate it. We also greatly appreciate the outpouring of support and just the really kind words that we heard yesterday at the memorial service. That means more to us than I don't think anybody ever knows. And even the global support that we're seeing for Charlie has been overwhelming, and it doesn't go unnoticed. So thank you so much. I have 3 questions, if I may, on the horrific murder of Charlie Kirk. Government and local officials said that Antifa inscriptions were engraved in these bullet casings that killed Charlie Kirk. It appears to be a trend, especially after what we saw in the Annunciation Church shooting, Catholic Church shooting. Additionally, Stephen Miller recently commented on the rise in this kind of violence, saying there is a domestic terrorist movement growing in this country. The president is designating Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization. I'm wondering, what is the approach to holding these people accountable, just to ensure that violence like this just is eradicated moving forward?
Sure. Well, Antifa is going to be designated a domestic terrorist organization. The president intends to sign that executive order very soon.
I think it was signed. I believe it was signed today, I believe.
As it's drafted as soon as today, later this afternoon. And this is something the president campaigned on because we have seen a rise in violence perpetuated by Antifa radical people across this country who subscribe to this group. And unfortunately, it's gone widely uncovered by many in the legacy media. It also went completely ignored by the previous administration. Not anymore. Not only, as you mentioned, were the bullet casings subscribed with Antifa mottos, if you will, in the heinous assassination of Charlie, but there have also been more examples than I could read off for you here in this briefing room today of violence from Antifa. I will just read a few. In July 2025, several members of an Antifa cell ambushed and opened fire on officers at an ICE facility in Alvarado, Texas, shooting one officer in the neck. Also in July 2025, 3 Antifa members were charged with assaulting a police officer during a violent riot outside an ICE facility in Portland, which for weeks prior had been under siege from the local Antifa terror cell. In February 2024, a transgender Antifa terrorist detonated an explosive device outside of the office of the Republican Attorney General of Alabama. In July 2023, Antifa members linked to abortionist group Jane's Revenge firebombed pro-life facilities and vandalized churches. In January 2022, a suspected Antifa member was arrested for bringing a pipe bomb to a pro-Trump event. In January 2021, an Antifa supporter threatened to shoot police officers and Trump supporters outside of the Florida State Capitol building. Again, I could continue to list many more examples for those in the room who don't believe this is a serious threat to American safety and our national security, but this administration knows that it is. That's why the president will be signing this order. And we will also be, most importantly, looking at who is funding Antifa and who is funding these other violent left-wing groups that we've seen perpetuate so much crime and mayhem across our country.
Thank you.
The one problem I have with the Republicans and all of this, who is doing this and that, it's taking them too long to find out who it is. And I believe they know who it is, but it's taking too long to prosecute. It takes too long to have the perp walks. It's one of those kind of things that I believe that they tread lightly because there's always fingers pointing both ways. And they have to have like a clean thing. I mean, they want to go after Letitia James, right? But doing some of the same things that Trump did, but there's still no indictments, right? So we hear a whole bunch of bullshit about all these bad people, but nobody's doing a perp walk. So that's the one big thing that I have a problem with them. There's a lot of wolf tickets, but nobody's cashing the goddamn checks.
And Charlie Kirk died exercising his First Amendment right, willingly debating, conversing with everybody and anybody. That was what he did. So what message does this White House have now to all Americans who feel like they are too afraid to express their beliefs, their values, their morals in the wake of such horrific violence?
I think the president has answered this, and I will leave it to his response, Monica, where he so beautifully said, we have to keep fighting. We have to keep speaking up. We have to keep speaking our mind. I know that's what Charlie would want us to do. And we have a right to free speech in this country. The president supports it. It is protected by our beautiful Constitution. And Americans should not cower in fear. They should rise up in courage to continue speaking the truth.
And to end on a lighter note, Karoline, sure. I'd love to know what your favorite memory of Charlie is.
Sure. Charlie was a great guy, and he was, of course, a very influential person in the conservative movement, in the MAGA movement. He was so helpful to the president during the campaign and to all of us who worked on that campaign, that historic campaign. I myself had many great memories going on Charlie's amazing podcast and his show. He was always willing to text people with words of encouragement. In fact, my last text exchange with him was the day before he died. And he was asking for my husband and I's address to send a children's book to our son. And I think that just speaks to the type of person that he was. And I know so many of us here at the White House are going to miss him very much.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you. Gabe.
Caroline, thank you. Regarding the autism announcement,
Sure.
Why now? Does the administration have new data that hasn't been published previously showing a possible link between acetaminophen and autism?
I know there's been many reports about what this announcement at 4 o'clock will be, Gabe. The president is very excited about this. So I don't want to scoop the president of the United States and our Secretary of Health and Human Services. But what I can assure you is that Robert F. Kennedy and the incredible health team that this president has put together are really viewing things in a much different lens. And they are paying attention to studies and the gold standard of science and research that many in this city for far too long have turned a blind eye to. So I think Americans are going to be enlightened and proud of what they hear later this afternoon, but I won't get ahead of the president on exactly what that announcement entails.
Now, this came out yesterday. So today, Tylenol is being used as one of the culprits for autism. And I didn't really research it any further than hearing that. But I still say you can't say shit unless you can back it up with a lot of data. Even if you're right, or even if you have an inkling that you are right, you can't announce stuff that you can't back up with sound science. I mean, that's the same thing that the left did with the vaccinations, right? I mean, people just took them out of fear, not because the science was there, right? We found out a lot of things were just not true. So the only thing I think you have going for, that we have going for us as human beings or as Americans, is that in 2000, only 1 out of 150 kids had autism. Now in 2022, the study said is 1 out of 31. And today it might even be worse than that. So we know that there's something we're eating, there's something that we're drinking, there's something in the food, there's something in the drugs, especially since vaccines are mandated. And Tylenol could be a culprit because people take Tylenol like it's candy, right? You know, I don't know how many people you know haven't taken Tylenol, baby, and women in childbearing ages, you know, men in childbearing ages, you know, people have been popping Tylenols for years. But I just think it's not fair unless you have solid science to prove the connection. So I know it's more to come, but I think that's a mistake by announcing what might be the culprit. You know, it really is, I believe.
Different topic. Going back to the president's social media post from over the weekend regarding the DOJ and his seeming frustration that they hadn't taken action quickly enough. I want to point to something that the president said during his inaugural address. Never again will the immense power of the state be weaponized to persecute political opponents. We will not allow that to happen. Is the president going back on his promise?
No. In fact, the president is fulfilling his promise to restore a Department of Justice that demands accountability. And it is not weaponizing the Department of Justice to demand accountability for those who weaponized the Department of Justice. And nobody knows what that looks like more than President Trump. We are not going to tolerate gaslighting from anyone in the media or from anyone on the other side who is trying to say that it's the president who is weaponizing the DOJ. It was Joe Biden and his attorney general who weaponized the DOJ. Joe Biden used this sacred American institution to go after his political opponent in the middle of an election year. And you look at people like Adam Schiff and like James Comey and like Letitia James, who the president is rightfully frustrated. He wants accountability for these corrupt fraudsters who abused their power, who abused their oath of office to target the former president and then candidate for the highest office in the land. And I think the president is reaffirmed in those frustrations and his hope for accountability by the millions and millions of people who reelected him to this office with a mandate to demand accountability. And the president has not been shy about this, Gabe. In fact, when he traveled to the Department of Justice earlier this year, all of you were there to cover it. He said, quote, "I demand a full and complete accountability for wrongs and abuses that have occurred. The American people gave a mandate to investigate and root the corruption out of our system." And that's what the president wants.
Yes. And yeah, Karoline, I hear all this shit. You're right. They're gaslighting because what they did to Trump and all of his people over the last Biden years was a travesty of justice. But y'all keep talking bullshit. Y'all still aren't indicting anybody. It's still the same bullshit. Letitia James, this guy, that guy, but nobody's being indicted. You know, so you just had to fire Attorney General because he wouldn't do from the DOJ because he wouldn't do what Trump wanted him to do, and he was appointed, and he was I guess appointed by the Senate or some shit like that. So the truth of the matter is, you know, it's a lot of talk, but there's no movement. That's why the Epstein thing's such a big deal. We said he was a monster, but the only two names we have is his name and the chick. right? And it's just two people. It had to be more than that. There was a press conference where, all of these so-called victims were out there, but nobody's naming names. It's just bullshit, man. Who was involved? And if the victims are not saying names, that means they're being told not to mention anybody's names by lawyers, right? So, and I'm just saying, listen, in the real world, if a woman was abused as a young girl by somebody that she knows his name and she doesn't say it, she's being coached not to say it. She's being warned not to say it. She's being forced not to say it, because a real victim would blurt the name out from the top of a mountain. She doesn't give a shit about lawsuits or anything. So we still don't know who. So this is all bullshit, Karoline. I agree with you on one part. Yeah, they weaponize the DOJ, they weaponize law enforcement, but you guys are weaponizing it, but there's still no receipts. None. And the elite, at least I hate it's bad, but the Democrats and liberals actually had receipts. They actually, whether they were, they weren't afraid to put names to the people they accused and put them on trial, especially Trump. And right now, you guys are dragging your feet with this bullshit. Who are you going after? And where's the indictments? Where are they? It's just, I'm tired of content creators on the right keep using the same thumbnails about this person's in trouble, that person's in trouble, this person got caught. It's just all bullshit, because nobody's doing a perp walk.
To see done.
Karoline.
Ed.
On the autism issue again, there are reams of scientific research that suggests there's no clear link between autism and acetaminophen usage. You're suggesting today they may have new information on this. A lot of it, and this entire debate, has the potential to confuse women, especially pregnant women, about what to do. What do you say to those that say what you're doing today potentially just introduces more confusion into the debate?
I think women for many years, in fact, for decades, Ed, have been confused by the rapid increase in autism in this country, in the childhood epidemic, that is chronic epidemic, disease epidemic that is plaguing America's youth. Women are confused about that, and they want answers to that. And that's exactly what this administration is focused on finding. And before you jump to conclusions based on reports that the White House has not even confirmed, I would encourage everyone in this room to go into the 4 o'clock announcement with some critical thinking skills and with some open ears to actually listen to what the president and his team of outsiders have to say about this. And there will be a number of things that will be announced and discussed. And I think, I know as a mother myself, I speak, I believe, for many mothers across the country who really want answers to what is happening to our nation's children. So again, I won't get ahead of the president, but I think everyone in this room needs to tone down the judgment before you even hear what people are going to say.
Well, on that point, she's absolutely correct. I don't care I shouldn't say I don't care. Maybe we don't have the direct answer to the autism problem. Nobody can refuse or refute the fact that autism is plaguing our children. It's plaguing our children, man. And, why would it take Trump to really do some real research? What was the CDC doing besides just telling us all kinds of bullshit, man? Listen, this thing should have been under all kinds of microscopes. And we need to start to remove some of the protections from the drug companies. They should be liable for some of the shit they say to us, right? To sell their drugs, right? We let them advertise on TV, but they don't tell you half of the side effects of any of these drugs. So it's something wrong. We use dyes in our food that are illegal around the world, right? Why are we doing that? Why is that possible? So, we sit down here in America, the home of the free and brave and all that kind of shit. And our food industry is on worse part in some other places, a lot of places. It's crazy. So yeah, something's wrong. Something's in the mix, and it's impacting the children. And, children are the future, right? And we're running out of them.
Sure.
Thanks, Caroline. So two on the Holman investigation. I mean, can you just speak to, did the president ask the Justice Department to close the case? And does Holman have to return the $50,000?
Well, Mr. Holman never took the $50,000 that you're referring to, so you should get your facts straight, number one.
Oh, that's a great, that question was so loaded. You know, oh my God. You know what? That was great. Wait a second. I gotta go back. I gotta move it back. Just a little bit. Maybe I moved it back too much.
A number of things that will be announced and discussed. And I think I know as a mother myself, I speak, I believe, for many mothers across the country who really want answers to what is happening to our nation's children. So again, I won't get ahead of the president, but I think everyone in this room needs to tone down the judgment before you even hear what people are going to say. Sure.
Thanks, Caroline. So two on the Holman investigation. I mean, can you just speak to, did the president ask the Justice Department to close the case? And does Holman have to return the $50,000?
Well, Mr. Holman never took the $50,000 that you're referring to, so you should get your facts straight, number one. Number two, this was another example of the weaponization of the Biden Department of Justice against one of President Trump's strongest and most vocal supporters in the midst of a presidential campaign. You had FBI agents going undercover to try and entrap one of the president's top allies and supporters, someone who they knew very well would be taking a government position months later. Mr. Holman did absolutely nothing wrong. And even the president's Department of Justice, even Kash Patel's FBI, looked into this just to make sure. They had a number of different prosecutors and FBI agents who looked into this. They found zero evidence of illegal activity or criminal wrongdoing. In the White House and the president stand by Tom Homan 100% because he did absolutely nothing wrong. And he is a brave public servant who has done a phenomenal job in helping the president shut down the border.
So wait a minute. So listen, if this is not true, Karoline, this is a clear case of defamation, right? It's a clear case of defamation. It should stand up against any scrutiny for the 5 steps of defamation. We know who he is. We know they're trying to smear his reputation. They accuse him of a crime, and if it's a lie, somebody should be going to jail for it, or at least civilly liable for it, right? I mean, that's. But if we're going to just say it didn't happen, well, you know, who put it out there, and how come that person gets to say some shit that just simply not true, you know, and that could be proven to be a lie? So, you know, so if we you know, it sounds good from the podium, Karoline, and I hope you're right, because everybody who I know, like me, love Tom Homan. You know what I'm saying? But if he didn't get caught in a trick bag, they need to punish the person who put that shit out there. If not criminally, at least civil.
Mary.
Thanks, Caroline. I have 2 questions on far-left violence.
Sure.
The first one, the president said yesterday that the bullet hit Charlie, but it was aimed at every one of us. Do you and your colleagues have a heightened sense of fear following this shooting and this far-left violence we're seeing across the country?
I certainly think there's a heightened sense of awareness by conservatives across the country. By all of us here at the White House. Again, as I said to Monica, many of us were personal friends with Charlie and had involvement with Turning Point before we came and served our government in this way. So certainly it's a very shocking incident. And I think, you know, it's very unfortunate that those of us who work in this movement have to think about violence just for speaking our minds and for supporting President Trump.
And as a follow-up on that, I asked the president last night on Air Force One about this pattern of transgender violence we're seeing. You know, Charlie's killer lived with his boyfriend who identifies as transgender, and then we had the Annunciation shooting, the Covenant shooting, all of these incidents. The president said that we're looking into transgender violence. Does that mean the FBI is looking into it? And can you give any more clarity on how the administration is viewing this uptake in specifically transgender violence?
It's definitely something worth looking into. And I think anyone who denies that at this point is being willfully ignorant. And the administration is taking it seriously, all causes of violence, and why these people would be driven to such evil and such hatred. And there's probably many answers to that question, but the administration is really focused on all.
Well, it's clear. I mean, it's clear why people are driven to the violence is not the extreme. The fact that a man with his schlong walks around thinking he's a woman, that's the extreme part. The fact that that's not covered as a mental illness and it was taken out of what the DM5 or whatever that shit is called as a mental illness of what you call it, sexual dysphoria or whatever it is. The fact that it's not being treated as a mental illness and we got millions of people walking around with this illness, what makes you think that is a big leap to extreme violence? Right? We were just before in the Biden administration, they were firing people from their jobs because nobody wanted to start calling people a Viz and a Ver and a Vile and a Furry and all this kind of bullshit, man. They're putting all kinds of stuff in the book. So this is not a big leap that we got a whole bunch of mentally ill people walking around, acting like they're normal. And then forcing themselves on the rest of society to accept their mental illness. You know what I'm saying? I mean, come on. Now, it's one thing. Listen, here's my thing. It would be a completely different thing if a person, a man or a woman, wanted to be identified as the other sex, as long as they did it in the privacy of their own home and the way they wanted to do it. But because they're trying to make the rest of us accept it by force is the issue. That's the issue. I mean, it's you don't take no great shakes. It's live and let live. As a black man, if we just wanted civil rights and we just wanted to, yeah, okay, you got it. But when you try to impose other things on people, you learn lessons that, hey, wait a minute, your rights stop here. And now you want more. Right? Same-sex marriage was here. Then all of a sudden it was same-sex marriage and it was, can we adopt children? All of a sudden it's now, can we adopt children and do we teach same-sex marriage to second graders? Then it's drag queens in front of everybody. So the point really, it never stops. Right? So if you just want to do anything in the privacy of your own home, that's one thing. But forcing everybody else, even they came up with a slur against straight people. Assist this and assist that. That's as much of a slur as somebody calling me an N-word, as far as I'm concerned. And then we have to accept that. So the point really is, it's not a far reach that these people are over the line. And there's a whole list of violence from those people because they think they have a right to do it.
All of them. For individual investigations and cases, of course, the FBI and the Department of Justice are leading those. But as for this overall violence and domestic terrorism that we're seeing, the White House and the president's policy team will be leading the charge. And that really begins with designating Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization. And I can assure you there will be additional actions to come. Sure, in the pink.
Thanks, Karoline. Liz Landers with PBS NewsHour. I just wanted to follow up quickly on something that the president had said yesterday. So we heard from Erica Kirk. She said she forgives the man who shot and killed her husband. And then right after that, we heard from the president who said, I hate my opponent and I don't want the best for them. How does that square with bringing down the temperature of political violence in this country? And then if I could, I had a follow up on Venezuela too.
Look, the president is authentically himself. I think that's why millions of Americans across the country love him and support him, including Erica Kirk, who you saw so beautifully was on stage with the president in an unthinkable moment, in the midst of an unthinkable tragedy, and was leaning on the president for support during that time. And he was there to give it to her, as well as the vice president and many other top-ranking cabinet officials.
That's not a fair comparison, because what the president says pales in comparison to what the widow says. The widow says she forgives him. That carries so much more weight than what the president says, because she's the one who's intimately, I mean, absolutely intimately attached to Charlie Kirk. Everybody else just knew him. They shook his hand. They, collaborated and shit. So the president doesn't have to acquiesce to her feelings. But if you want to weight or two on a scale, what the lady said is the only thing that matters. And wherever she found the energy and the strength and the Christianhood to forgive this guy who assassinated her husband, that's something that she carries, right? The president doesn't have to carry that water. He just doesn't. as a man. He doesn't have to carry that, and as well he shouldn't. You know, whether he should have came out and he didn't call for retaliation. He just said he don't forgive nobody, right? But those are not the same issue. So what's the second question?
Kayla.
Thanks, Caroline. On TikTok, the deal. How much is the deal? And if you can't give an exact number to how much the deal is, when can we expect to learn how much the deal is being valued at? And then separately, who are the members involved in the deal? Like, can you share any more details there?
So I don't have a specific number for you, nor am I going to confirm the specific individuals and entities in the deal, Kayla, but I do have several details I'm happy to run through for all of you. And the president will be signing the deal, the official deal, later this week at some point. Under the terms of this deal, TikTok will be owned by a majority of American investors and controlled by a board of directors with extensive national security and cybersecurity credentials. In partnership with the U.S. government, Oracle will serve as TikTok's trusted security provider, and they will independently monitor the safety and data security of all U.S. user data on TikTok's platform. Americans' data will be stored securely in the United States without access from China. All U.S. user data will be stored on servers operated by Oracle in the United States, protected from surveillance or interference by foreign adversaries. And the algorithm, I know this is a question many of you have had, will be secured, retrained, and operated in the United States outside of ByteDance's control. And TikTok will remain globally interoperable, meaning TikTok users in the US will be able to see videos posted by users in other countries and vice versa. While I don't have a number on the specific deal, we do expect that thanks to the president's leadership and the securement of this historic deal, businesses using TikTok will generate as much as $178 billion in economic activity within the US over the next 4 years. So this is great news, not just for the millions of American youth who use TikTok. Their data will be safe and secure with this new deal. They'll continue to use this very fun app. But it's also great news for all of the small business owners who have really been able to make a living off of the use of TikTok as well.
And if I could just get one more as it relates to China, on crop prices with farmers, as there's still no official trade deal with China, farmers are getting a little bit antsy navigating, prices being weak and not strong. How is the administration, thinking about farmers right now? Is there anything we can expect to see from the administration on, sort of bailing farmers out should prices continue to not work in their favor?
Well, the administration is completely understands the anxiety of farmers. We're very much aware of this issue. It has been a part of our discussions, the trade team's discussions with their Chinese counterparts. As for any specific actions, I don't have any news on that for you today, but I can fully assure you the entire National Economic Council in this building, as well as our Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins, have been talking with the trade team about this. There's been many meetings on this, and they are on the ball, but I don't have anything specific for you today. Sure, Selena.
Thanks, Caroline. But the case against Letitia James was extensively investigated for 5 months, and President Trump's handpicked Attorney General Eric Siebert could not find any evidence that he committed a crime. So is the president saying here it doesn't matter if there's a crime, he just wants his political enemies to be charged?
Well, let me just walk you through Letitia James.
But before she answers this, the question is disingenuous. It's not that the Attorney General didn't find any evidence of a crime. He didn't think it was enough for him to pursue because they let people get away with what she did all the time. And he was thinking about her position, and he was thinking about that he wouldn't prosecute that even if it's a prosecutable offense. Attorney generals do that shit all the time. They pick and choose what they want to prosecute. And those are the kind of things that people get a slap in the wrist on. But President Trump says, no, she doesn't get that kind of pass. Not for what kind of fucking woman she is. She doesn't get that kind of pass. She's, there's the evidence is right there. They got the documents. They're not forged. She might try to explain them away as a moment of mistake here and there, but no, you and I can't make those mistakes on our documents. So the question itself was disingenuous, but let's just hear what Karoline has to say about it.
Letitia James completely abused her oath of office. Letitia James was actively and openly engaged in lawfare. You talk about weaponizing the Department of Justice. What was Letitia James's campaign slogan? It was prosecute Donald Trump. She was saying she was going to prosecute Donald Trump before she even knew if Donald Trump committed a crime, which of course we did not. Those are not the words of a serious prosecutor. Those are the words of a corrupt politician who is abusing their power. She actively campaigned on that. She also led the witch hunt, the financial fraud investigation against President Trump and the Trump Organization, in an appeals court tossed that case out, a $500 million civil fraud penalty in August, which was another win for the president, and exonerated him of this witch hunt and showed that this is an individual who is corrupt and abused her oath of office. And we also have evidence of her mortgage fraud. An April report from a white-collar fraud investigator found that there was documented evidence that James engaged in a consistent pattern of financial and property disclosures that raise serious legal questions.
But why won't the president accept the conclusions of his Justice Department to not bring charges against Letitia James? In fact, you had Bondi and Blanche, top DOJ leadership, who were against ousting Eric Siebert, who again was picked by President Trump.
I just answered that question for you, and the president has every right to express how he feels about these people who literally campaigned on trying to put him in jail, who literally tried to ruin his life and ruin his businesses.
Yeah, I mean, Karoline is absolutely right. The prosecutor that he put in there is full of shit, right? Because it's a fraternity of these people, and he chose to stay in the fraternity as opposed to coming after Letitia. Even if the case is weak, she should be going through the ringer, man, right? And prove her innocence, just like she made Trump have to do. And if she gets exonerated, fine, but she should go through the, I mean, if you look at her deal with Kathy Hochul and the dirt that she's doing with Hochul and the kind of the people who are getting jobs and the money that they put away for her on the taxpayer's dime for her defense, listen, she's dirty as hell, man. There's a chance that she's dirty as hell, and she should at least be put under the spotlight. And if she survives the kind of shit she did to Trump, then so be it. But she should not be able to get away scot-free for the way she behaved and used the law. And if she has anything that's dirty, you know, she should be prosecuted, just like the chick who's on the Fed Commission chair board. Those documents are real, and the things that are documented there are nefarious. They should be investigated. But here, once again, the Republicans talk a lot of bullshit, man. But when it comes time to doing the dirty work and bringing out and getting their pound of flesh, they fall short, man. They fall short. So this, you know, the Democrats have no such governors, right? The liberals have no such governors. If you have any inkling of dirt, well, you're going to have to prove your innocence, but they're going to bring you in front of the Justice Department. And unfortunately, and maybe fortunately, the conservative Republicans are too chicken shit to actually, you know, fight these things out in court. They let these things slide. You know, so there's no perp walks. I mean, it's been 8 months. Where's the perp walks? They keep saying, even with Doge, right? They said there's waste, fraud, and abuse, but no goddamn perp walks. So whatever Karoline's saying here, it's just all bullshit, man. You know, so I don't blame the president being frustrated. He got a man in there that he thought would do his bidding, and he got duped. You know, the president gets duped every so often. You know, Pam Bondi, if she's endorsing this guy, you know, listen, either Letitia James is clean and what she did with those documents is not an issue that should be raised to a crime, then they should say that. But no, it's enough to put her through the ringer. Just for the hell of it. That's what she did to Trump. You know, so is it right? I don't know. Is it retaliation? You goddamn right it is.
And he wants to see accountability for those who abuse their office and abuse their power. And Letitia James absolutely did that, whether you want to admit it or not.
Is that not retribution, though?
Jeff, it's accountability.
Thanks,
Jeff.
Karoline. 2 foreign policy questions. President Putin has offered President Trump a 1-year extension of for the most recent treaty limiting nuclear weapons. Does the White House have a reaction to that? Does the president want to accept that offer? And then one separate issue, just generally, what is the president's response or reaction to the number of countries this week who are planning to or have recognized a Palestinian state?
Two great questions, Jeff. To your first question about Russia, the president is aware of this offer extended by President Putin, and I'll let him comment on it later. I think it sounds pretty good, but he wants to make some comments on that himself, and I will let him do that. As for all of these Western nations that are recognizing a Palestinian state, the president has been very clear. He disagrees with this decision. He spoke about that in the UK, standing right next to his friend, Prime Minister Starmer, and he feels this does not do anything to release the hostages, which is the primary goal right now in Gaza, does nothing to end this conflict and bring this war to a close.
I'm sorry for stopping it. First of all, this has never been a war. It's been a genocide from the beginning. And all of these states who are considering, who are saying that they recognize a Palestinian state, it's too little too late. It's just bullshit. It's posturing. They should have put sanctions and everything on Israel from the beginning. In fact, they should have never let this shit happen back in the 40s, right? So the fact is that, it's a little too late, and that's just the way it is. I mean, the places are devastated. It's gone, right? And this whole thing that there's negotiations with Hamas and a possibility for peace it's a lie. It's an absolute lie. Israel's not going to stop until they kill every Hamas person they can. And if they got to kill every Palestinian to do it, they're going to do it. They're going to absolutely do it. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. That's what's going on. So there's no end to this thing. So we got to stop. We just got to stop. Either the weapons got to be withheld from Israel from any more American money, or else, everybody's just paying lip service. Everybody's just paying lip service. And you know what? It sucks for the Palestinians. And the fact is that the rest of the Arab world and the Muslim world, it's every man for themselves. They don't give a shit about nobody else. Right? It's every man for themselves. So anyway, I remember when America saved the Muslims in Europe. It was Clinton. People hated Clinton for doing this, but if it wasn't for Clinton, there would have been a genocide of Muslims over in Europe, right? Kosovo or whatever that was, right? He didn't get any credit for that, by the way. But I could tell you this, if it was Jews, there would have been no UN resolutions. There would have been nothing. They would have went over there and they would have kicked some ass. There's no talk. There's no bullshit. They would have kicked some ass. They would have destroyed the people who was genociding them, right? But the Muslims don't work that way. That's my vague memory of what happened back then. But Clinton didn't get any real. They were trying to say it was wag the dog, but it wasn't. He stopped the genocide of, I think, Muslims in Europe. I believe that was the case. Maybe I got it wrong, but I think that's what the case was. He never got any credit for that one, by the way.
And frankly, he believes it's a reward to Hamas. So he believes these decisions are just more talk and not enough action from some of our friends and allies. And I think you'll hear him talk about that tomorrow at the UN. Kristen.
Thanks, Karoline. Just going back to this Letitia James story. What does President Trump plan to do if the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, tells him that there is not enough evidence to bring his political opponents' cases or to charge those cases?
That's a hypothetical question, Kristen. That hasn't happened at this point.
But we did see one U.S. attorney not be able to find enough evidence, and now they no longer have a job. Is that something that you would consider?
Look, the president stands with Pam Bondi 100%. He made that clear this weekend. He answered questions from all of you last night on Air Force One. He said the same, and that's how he feels at this moment in time.
And I think it's just mischaracterized. It's not that he didn't find any evidence. He's saying what he found, he didn't want to prosecute. I think it sounds subtle, but I'm thinking that, prosecutors can prosecute a ham sandwich if they want to. And that's what President Trump wants. He doesn't give a shit. If there's a ham sandwich there with Swiss cheese on it and it should be American, he wants to prosecute, right? Because that's what they did to him. And yeah, is it tit for tat? You goddamn right it is. You know, that's exactly what it is. And they should stop denying that. He said, listen, for what they did to me, you know, you could call it whatever you want, but if your thing ain't pristine, I'm coming after you. That's what he should say. I mean, I don't know why they're beating around the bush. You know, but the guy he fired didn't want to bring, because those papers weren't a farce. She signed some shit that, you know, was not right. And those papers are public knowledge. And she could keep saying that there was a mistake here and I overlooked this there. But that's what Trump did, right? He didn't even have a victim in his case, and he still got prosecuted. You know, so let's stop mincing words. He wants to see her squirm. That's what he wants. You know, and I don't blame him. You know, and if she's innocent, she should. The system will work for her.
And just one more thing on the Attorney General.
Go ahead.
Caroline, would the president support designating Russia as a sponsor of terrorism if it does return kidnapped Ukrainian children? And then secondly, we just found out through questioning that Hunter Biden sat in on the discussions of his pardons. What's the White House response to that?
Unfortunately, I think it's unsurprising. And it's also very telling that one of the only pardons Joe Biden signed on his way out the door was the pardon of his son. Everything else was signed with an auto pen, but that one was clearly his own signature. To your first question about Russia, I have no news to share with you on that. Sure, in the yellow.
According to media reports, Maduro has sent a letter to President Trump, but President Trump avoided saying whether he has read it. Did he receive it?
We have seen this letter. Frankly, I think there were a lot of lies that were repeated by Maduro in that letter, and the administration's position on Venezuela has not changed. We view the Maduro regime as illegitimate, and the president has clearly shown that he's willing to use any and all means necessary to stop the illegal trafficking of deadly drugs from the Venezuelan regime into the United States of America.
Context of the letter?
Thank you. Go ahead.
The admin.
You and then go ahead. Sure.
Thank you, Caroline. Whitline with Borderhawk News. The admin has openly discussed taking legal action against officials in sanctuary jurisdictions. Just this last weekend, we saw Mayor of Evanston, Daniel Bliss, rioting and protesting outside the ICE facility near Chicago. Are there plans to start arresting sanctuary mayors or governors going forwards?
Unless they commit a crime, I don't see them being arrested. But if they are violating federal law, if they are violating state law, then of course they should be arrested by state and local law enforcement. If they're violating federal law, then they can expect the consequences of that behavior. Nick.
Thank you, Caroline. Would the president like to see Congress pass a national holiday honoring Charlie Kirk annually?
That's an interesting question. I'm sure he wouldn't oppose such a thing. But you can pose that to him yourself next time you get the chance.
Sure thing. And to follow up too, I know the president is honoring Charlie with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Is there anything else that we don't know of in the works to honor Charlie?
Not at this time, but we do look forward to that Medal of Freedom ceremony very soon. Daniel.
Thanks, Caroline. This past Friday, Adam Schiff, Tim Kaine, they introduced a resolution on Capitol Hill aimed at stopping the successful kinetic strikes against narco-terrorists in the Caribbean Sea. What does a move like this, what type of message does it send to families, specifically families who have suffered at the hands of deadly narco drugs like these?
I definitely think it sends the wrong message. We wish that Democrats would get on board with a very simple idea of ending drug trafficking and securing our homeland. And I saw a report this morning that the Dominican Republic actually helped us seize a boat that was on its way from Venezuela to the United States of America with lots of deadly drugs on board. And so if you actually hear from Caribbean nations in the region, they are thankful and grateful for the administration's efforts, and they're working alongside us to end this plague of drug trafficking through their seas. Sure, Karen.
Over the weekend, Democratic leaders Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries sent a letter to the White House asking for a meeting with the president to talk about government funding. Has the White House responded to that letter, and will the president sit down with them to talk about this, given that deadline is now 8 days away?
Discussions are ongoing with both Republican and Democratic members of Capitol Hill. I don't have any meetings or any scheduling updates for you today, but what I will share is that what this White House wants and what Republicans want. We want a clean funding extension to keep the government open. That's all we're advocating for, a simple, clean budget extension, a straightforward, responsible solution to keep the government open to November 21st and allow the full year appropriations process to move forward. And I will add, this is the same budget that the Democrats approved 6 months ago, just adjusted for inflation. And unfortunately, all of a sudden now, they want to shut down the government. And if the government is shut down, it's only going to, it will be the fault of the Democrats, and it will only hurt the most vulnerable in our country, our seniors, our veterans, our military families, and increasing security for members of Congress, which is something this White House and the administration supports. And if you look back at the statements made by Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries in the past, they too have advocated against a shutdown and for keeping the government open. Democrat Chuck Schumer himself said a shutdown would mean chaos and pain and needless heartache for the American people. He said once, avoiding a shutdown is very good news for the country, for our veterans, for parents and children, for farmers, and for small businesses. Hakeem Jeffries also said it's about the harm. Families will be hurt if there is a government shutdown. Farmers will be hurt. Holiday travel.
Hey, listen, man, this is the fact that they're even talking about shutting down the government means that why do we put them in there, right? The only job you have is to keep the government working. You can't use the American people as ping pongs because you don't have agreements. Now, the whole thing is that Republicans and they do it to each other every time. Why can't the budgets, that I think the debt ceiling shit shouldn't be coming to a vote like this. It just shouldn't. I mean, especially it seems like it's happening all the time. It's never clean. It's everything. What's this, the second, third, fourth time this year? Where's the goddamn budget? I thought they had the reconciliation bill to do this, to do that, and all of a sudden we're talking about shutting down again. I know it's the end of the fiscal year, at the end of September. It's just too much, man. To tell you the truth, it's bad. They're not doing their jobs. Democrats lost. You can't get what you want. You can't threaten them, hurt the American people to try to break the Republicans. They got the high ground, and there's just no way you're going to offload this if you shut down the government on the Republicans. You got to give them what they want.
Will be impacted. Democrats clearly know what the right thing to do is here. It's to join with Republicans to pass this clean funding extension. That's what the White House and the president wants. And with that, we will see you all at 4 o'clock for this big announcement later on. Thanks, guys.
All right. That's another good one. All right. There was a lot said there. I didn't agree with everything. I think the Republicans need to put their money where their mouth is, especially when it comes to indictment and things of that nature. So, all right. Our Payne, over and out on this one. Thanks for showing up, Coach Ferg. And we'll talk to you guys out there. Make sure you hit the like button and check this out on replay.